Hey folks, Free Play Frank. Well, as you can see, we got a little bit of snow on the farm today, and now it's slowly turning back into rain, which I don't particularly care for, but we're making do. So today I've got part 2 of the $200 Forklift Will It Run series. And then later I'm going to play a classic Prism song, Young and Restless. Alright, let's get going. Alright, well, it's been 3 weeks since I've been out here working on this, because unfortunately my mother's health took a turn for the worst and she ended up passing away. And I don't care how alpha you are, when you get that news it knocks you on your ass. So in the future I'm going to do a video talking about how to cope with that. Okay, back to the forklift here. So I took the carburetor apart and cleaned it all out, and it wasn't bad. It was 2 jets were plugged. I cleaned them out with carb spray and blew them out. And then I decided that I wasn't going to start this right away until I changed all the fluids first. I'll show you why. Because if you look at the intake manifold, it slopes downhill away from the engine towards the bottom of where the carburetor attaches through the governor. So pouring gas down the carburetor is not going to help. It's not going to atomize. It's just going to pool in the bottom of the manifold, and it's not going to work that way. So I have to get the fuel pump working, which, by the way, I took it apart and troubleshooted it, and the fuel pump is not working anymore. It runs, but it won't move any fuel. So I'm getting another fuel pump for it. And I also cleaned out both the fuel and the hydraulic tanks, and they weren't bad. Well, you can't see, it's too dark in there, but they weren't bad. There was about a gallon of water came out the bottom of the hydraulic tank as soon as I took out the plug. There's the old hydraulic coil. So I cleaned it all out, and I cleaned out the gas tank, and I took some of the gas that was in the gas tank and used it to rinse out the hydraulic tank. And the gas tank isn't rusty inside. It has a little bit of sediment in the bottom, which I'll just vacuum out after it air dries. Now here, this is the pickup tube for the hydraulic tank. And you can see it has this arrangement. This gold stuff is screen. It's to keep particles from getting into the system. And I don't know how the heck I'm going to fix that, so I'm going to adapt something else to this. I'm going to get a different style of pickup screen and adapt it to this. So as soon as I get a hold of that, I haven't gone out looking for it yet. I took the measurements. So as soon as I get that, then I will carry on. Okay, so I got the fuel pump installed. Been 3 weeks again since I worked on this last. Took a while to find the fuel pump and had other stuff to do. So I went with a Carter style pump. I didn't film the install of this because it's just basic plumbing and the wiring was already there. And I had to make this bracket welded onto the original pump mount with 2 holes. So now the hydraulic pickup. I'll show you what I've got for that. We can't get that other style of thing. If I could get it, it would be way too much money. So I got this style. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off that bracket and smooth out the tube, and then I have this threads into the other piece, and it's just a little bit too small to fit over the end of this, so I can machine this out on the lathe so that I can push it on, get it at the right height. So I'll show you what that looks like when I get it done. Okay, there's what that looks like. And this will just thread onto there. And it's the same length overall as the old pickup tube was. Next step, get it all assembled and filled up with oil. And then we'll try and start it up. Alright, let's try it. Alright, let's try it. Okay, I did the compression check and it's not good. Got 2 dead cylinders. 2 rear cylinders have 120 pounds of compression, and the 2 front cylinders doesn't even move the needle. So what I'm suspecting that it is, I stuck a wire down into the spark plug holes to make sure that the rods aren't broken. I didn't think they were because you'd hear it clunking and crashing in there if it was. But the pistons are still moving up and down, so what I think it probably is there's a stuck valve or a burnt valve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the rocker cover, and then I'm going to check the valves and the springs and see how tight they are. And if they're loose, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the springs. First I'm going to push a piece of rope into the cylinder. This is an old mechanic's trick. You push a piece of rope down into the cylinder, and then you turn the motor by hand until it pushes the rope up against the valves and stops them from falling down into the cylinder when you remove the springs. And then you connect an electric drill to the valve stem and pull up on it and let it spin against the seat. And if there's any carbon in there, it'll wear it off, and kind of like a poor man's lapping job. It's the only thing you can really do. We've already tried putting oil in the cylinders, and that didn't help. And it's the only thing you can really do without taking the head off, and I'm not sure if I can get parts for this, so before I take anything apart, I'm going to try everything I can do without spending any money. So I'm going to get that set up and see you in a bit. Alright, so I've been trying to start this with no luck. Camera's rolling each time, but what I've come to the conclusion is I don't believe I have enough compression. So the next step is to check the compression and see what that is. And now it's time for goat appreciation. See, some of these younger goats, I like to bring them in the shop and let them eat, where the big goats won't bully them out of the food. Anyways, I'll get that compression check done and let you know how that goes. Okay, we got 2 stuck valves. They're stuck in the open position. I'll turn the fan, and you can see the second valve from the front there. You can see that the rocker arm, see the rocker arm's moving, but the valve is staying down. It's not coming back up. And the same with the 4th valve. So they're both intake valves. They're both stuck opened on number 1 and number 2. So I'm going to have to do my rope trick and get that freed up. Now the problem here is I've been turning it over with 2 valves in the stuck open position. So hopefully it's not an interference motor. Now that means that when you turn the motor over with the valves open, the pistons hit the valves. Now it's a commercial industrial engine, so most likely it won't be that way, and it's probably not very high compression. So I'm going to hope for the best, and I'll get them freed up, and then I'll do the drill trick too and reseat everything, and then we'll try it again. So I got it done, so let me show you how I did it. Here's the rope that I fed into the cylinder. So what you do is you turn the fan until you see the exhaust valve will open and close, then the intake valve will open and close. Then you want to turn the fan so it turns the motor over about another half a turn. That way the rocker arms are in the lowest position. And then you feed your rope in through the spark plug hole, and then you turn the fan back the other way until it squishes it up against the top of the cylinder, and that'll hold your valves in place. So when you take it apart, they won't fall down in the cylinder. Of course, since it's stuck, it's not going to fall down there anyways. And then I used a big screwdriver to pop it loose, pry it loose. And here's the valve spring compressor that I used to remove the spring. And here's the drill I used. I had to use it with a 1/4-inch chuck because the 1/2-inch chuck won't fit in there. And it's a forward reverse variable speed drill, so I went back and forth and then up and down, back and forth, up and down a bunch of times, and then I kept oiling it with that zoom spout oiler and with the penetrating oil until it was nice and freed up. And then when you go to take your rope out, sometimes a rope will jam in the cylinder, so don't panic. Just get a wire, stick it in the spark plug hole and wiggle it around in there, and then keep trying to get your rope out. Maybe move the piston up and down once or twice. So I got the compression gauge hooked up, so let's see how much it improved. Oh yeah. Okay, we got 110 pounds. That's good. It's almost what the other ones were. Okay, well, I'll try the other one, and if it's 110, then hopefully the next video will show this thing running. I tried to start it again, and no go. The fuel's not getting through the carburetor. And when I looked down the carburetor venturi, I could see that it was where I was pouring the prime in. It was filling up on the one side. So I thought, oh, I must have filled up that manifold. Remember I showed you how that manifold goes lower than the cylinder head? Well, if you look at the governor, it's blocked off on the one side, so it's only a 1-barrel carburetor. So I was pouring the prime down the wrong side. And the accelerator pump wasn't working, and there's a few other, I found a couple other internal passages that were blocked, so I cleaned it all out with carb spray, and then I blew it all out with air, and I got everything out of it. I've blown through every jet a few times over, and see where I messed up the gasket here. That's not the end of the world there. You just put grease on both sides of the gasket. When you tighten everything down, the grease will squish down into the areas where the gasket's cracked and seal it. One thing you got to be careful when you take these Japanese carburetors apart is that they've got little ball bearings that are check valves. Like there was one down in this hole here. See this little copper jet, that's the accelerator pump, and there was a little ball down in here. So what I do is I put a piece of cardboard or towel, and then I turn the carburetor upside down and shake it so that anything that's in there will fall down and get caught on the paper and not get lost. Here it is right here. Now if I would have lost that would mean that my carburetor is not going to work. Anyways, the rest of the parts, like the accelerator pump diaphragm, is good, and I blew all these are the main jets here. One of them is never ever used. It's blocked off. You can see it has this guy here screws into the bottom of the bowl to block the flow for the secondary. The float appears to be okay. Like it was blocking off the fuel, so I don't think it's saturated with fuel. Because that's a problem with carburetors. You can't buy floats for them anymore. It's the government's little conspiracy to try to get us to abandon our gasoline or carbureted engines. So if anybody knows where you can get a custom float made or knows how to do it yourself, please post in the comments. I'd love to see it. And then they have this heat shield that goes on top the manifold, between the manifold and the governor. So I cleaned all these parts up in the wash tank and have these spacers. I'm not sure why they use two. And then the gaskets go in between everything. And this stuff all had vacuum leaks because the gas was all running down through these and leaking out around there. So when I put all that back together, I'm going to put grease on everything. I'm not doing anything with the governor. The governor's factory set, still wired, so I'm going to assume that it's in good condition. We'll get all this back together, and then we'll try it again. Okay, she's all back together now. I got the carb on, and I end up going through the distributor again, and I put some better plug wires on, reset the point gap to 15 thou. And I also had to disconnect the vacuum advance because it's leaking, so I plugged off the hose so there's no vacuum leak. And here's a little scoop I made out of a piece of tin to clean out the sludge out of the hydraulic tank. Worked pretty well. Alright, oh, and another thing I did was I soaked the choke cable in oil while I had the carb apart, so the choke worked properly now. So let's give her a try. Battery problems. Well, I'm going to boost the battery some more. Okay, another battery. Okay, another battery. Let's try it. Runs. A bit too much advance there. Advancing it. Runs. Charging the battery. To get her to stay running, but she is running. Okay, let me fiddle with this thing a bit here. Let me fiddle with it a bit here and get it to run a little smoother, and then we'll try the hydraulics. works. A little bit too wet out here. I was going to try and pick up that pallet, but I'm starting to slip, so. But you guys will get to see me using this thing around here for other projects, so. I'm going to do some more work on it. I'm going to change out the rest of the fuel filter, rest of the fluids and filters, and get a new plug wires for it. And I may have to get a head gasket and pull the head because it sounds like one of those valves is probably not sealing properly. But anyways, we got her running, and hopefully you guys learn some good techniques how to get a motor running that hasn't run in a long time without spending a lot of money. So we'll carry on.
Standing at attention, waiting for the bell to ring. After all the crap I've been through, gonna make my break. Whatever it takes, let them know that I ain't fooling. Young and restless, running out of control. Young and restless, heading for an overload. Going for reaction, good or bad, I don't care. Spurring something drastic to turn the adrenaline on. Then take a stand, see we didn't know what we were doing. Young and restless, running out of control. Young and restless, heading for an overload. Trying for attention, recognition for the pain. Flying so low is a vision, so lost and so alone. Then all at once, it's gonna hit you without warning. Young and restless, running out of control. Young and restless, heading for an overload. Young and restless, running out of control. Young and restless, heading for an overload.
Alright, that was Young and Restless by Prism from their 1980 album by the same name. For some reason that song always reminds me of my cousin Dave. So if you're watching, buddy, I miss you. Okay, my shout out tonight goes to LifeofLuke. Now, Luke is a fellow from my neck of the woods here in BC, Canada, and he does abandoned property and abandoned mine videos, abandoned town videos all up and down the coast of BC. It's a good channel. He's a fun guy to watch, so check him out if you're into that sort of thing. And thanks, guys, for joining me this week, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.